Hey, Darren. Welcome to Talk Recovery Radio, everybody. This is Giuseppe, and my co-host Darren is somewhere there. Darren, are you there? I can see your portrait. Darren's connected to audio. Welcome to Talk Recovery Radio, everybody. We come to you live every Thursday, noon till 1. And we bring you the latest in addiction recovery issues. And we've got some awesome guests coming on the show today. So we're excited for that. Okay. Not too sure what's going on with Darren there. Darren. Oh, you're back on mute. There you are. Hello, Darren.
Going?
Pretty good, pretty good. Welcome to the show, Darren. I'm glad that you got yourself a coffee. Welcome back to the show, everybody. You can catch us on Facebook and SoundCloud and all that. You know the intro if you watched our shows before. Darren, how you been for the past week?
Yeah, isn't that the question and answer that requires a little bit more care now? It's weird because it's not just like everything's normal. You know, when the pandemic, like the COVID situation came along, it was as if the overdose crisis was non-existent.
Yeah.
And now with like, you know, the racial and social divide in the States, and sort of like, you know, the Canadians are talking about our responsibilities and our history, and now that's sort of, you know, taken over the COVID concern, and it's like morally and ethically, and you know, the question of how are you doing is way more complicated. I find, you know, like what should I be doing? And you know, I was even talking about or thinking about like, do we consider this stuff on the show, or do we make it something else when we do that? And
well,
you know,
when we started the show, I don't know, like we always had to like do this disclaimer about COVID, and I don't know if you've noticed, we don't do the disclaimer anymore. You know, it's just like everything's messed up, so just deal with it.
it is, but I mean, I'm just thinking like I feel like I'm someone, you know, in current recovery, and I think those of us that are a little bit more sensitive to how we should think and what we should support, and be careful of our opinions, because I don't know, I personally, I don't like to engage in conflict of any kind, which makes me sort of, you know, my comfortable place is not saying anything, keep things light. But I have this feeling of like, you know, where I come into my program and morality around it, you know, that I should be doing more, and I need to be doing more, and if there's a platform that I have, you know what I mean? And
well, this is part of what you're doing more of, so you know, that's
yeah,
what you're doing a radio show.
I think that under it all, because if we don't talk about it, doesn't mean we're ignoring it, but rather remembering the situations and the people, and how hard it is for addicts and those of us in recovery.
You know, I'm so glad that you actually brought that up, because we just finished those strengthening recovery webinars with the BCCSU, and so much of it was about having everyone's voices at the table, and it's impossible to have everyone's voices at the table sometimes, because there's just not enough time, space, or anything. And we tried our best, but we got lots of criticism online, which was, you know, very uncomfortable. And when we say all pathways matter, we mean all pathways matter. But for some bizarre reason, if we don't specifically talk about certain pathways, they feel left out. And I value that. And we took the input, and you know, we'll be launching a blog with all 4 parts of the webinar. So check out our Facebook page in the next couple of weeks. Probably next week it will be done. And you can take a look at the 4 webinars that we did with the BCCSU. For those that don't know what that is, that's the British Columbia Center on Substance Use, which really is the body behind all the drug policy in Canada. So it was good to have a recovery webinar there. We've got 2 guests that we want to talk recovery with today. For those of you that are watching us, Talk Recovery Live airs live every Thursday on Vancouver Co-op Radio 100.5 FM. We're on Zoom live right now because the studio is in shutdown mode. Lots of microphones there that they've asked us to do these shows outside of the office. This is what we're doing. So the show will be rebroadcast on air next Thursday. So if you're on the radio right now, you're listening to last week's show. And if you're on Facebook, you're listening to us live. So welcome to the show. Catch us on SoundCloud, YouTube, iTunes, and at talkrecoveryradio.com. Talk Recovery Radio is brought to you by New West Recovery, which is Canada's recovery community, Lastar Recovery Center, and Westminster House. That's my friend Darren down there, or depending on the view, up there on one computer, down there on the other. And we like to talk about recovery with people from around the world. And today we've got 2 guests. Our first guest, Darren, who are we talking recovery with today?
Yeah, we get to talk recovery with, a sober coach, a person in recovery herself, Amy Guerrero. Hello and welcome to Talk Recovery.
Hi there, how are you?
I'm well, thanks. And yourself?
I'm doing great. It's good to be
Hi,
here.
Amy.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Yes.
So we have a theme, it appears, today. I mean, maybe not specifically from both our guests, but a theme of coaching, lifestyle coaching, and, you know, a lot of the discussion is going to be around not like how do you help somebody get clean so much, but a person who's made some serious effort and big changes in their life, but perhaps is stuck in a rut, needs to move forward somehow. So Amy Guerrero, our first guest, is with Thrive in Recovery.
Yep.
Why don't we start with that? Tell us a little bit about Thrive in Recovery.
Yeah, so, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. So delightful to get to do this with people in the world.
Right on,
and just connect like this on this level.
Yeah.
And that's really what all of my work is about. It's about really connecting at the level that maybe as a sober person, you've never in your life. It's so often, I know for me and my story, like I was hiding who I really was because I was terrified. And I had so many responses to the trauma that I'd had in my life that I was just a kind of a version of myself. I'd fragmented myself into so many different pieces that I was like, who do I need to be now? And then how can I be here? And, you know, so much of the work that I do in the world is showing people that it's okay, number one, to have this like, oh gosh, who am I as a conscious, sober person? And 2, like, let's dig a little deeper and get into those emotional traumas that happen so that you can relate to everything in your life in a new way. And so I really support people to have healthy, thriving relationships in all areas of their life.
Well, you mentioned conscious sobriety. It's a few times commented on your website. Explain what is conscious sobriety versus just plain old sobriety.
Totally. Yeah. So it's something that I struggled with right away. So my first time in treatment, I was like, so we're sober, but we're eating a shit ton of sugar. Sorry, I use language that's direct. We're eating a lot of sugar and everyone's smoking cigarettes and, you know, escaping in all of these different ways. And that's not really being addressed because obviously the first thing that needs to be addressed is please stop, you know, killing yourself with these other substances.
Right.
However, we're also slowly, I was already on a, like, I'm a yoga teacher and I'm doing this. And, you know, I just was like, this doesn't make sense to me. And so what I really decided then was like, I want to live a conscious, sober lifestyle. I want to show up consciously to everything I do with that like lens of like, what's underneath here? What am I trying to escape? So I really help people and support people to understand what is their level that they want to live at. And then how can they choose consciousness moment to moment
Right.
that space. I mean, we all escape with
Yeah.
different things, right? Like, and we don't want to trade one thing for another.
And it's super easy if the problem's alcohol, initially, that, and you've quit that the word sober is, I got it all together. There's nothing more going on. So conscious sobriety brings a more broader definition of the word sober in many more aspects of one's life.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, even relationships with sugar and how you eat, and how you relate to one thing is how you relate to everything. So
turn your mic off for a little bit. Me too. It's super important what we ingest. I mean, we think if we stop ingesting substances and chemicals that's enough, but sugar's a beautiful hidden form of saying it's something else that it isn't, right? It's very much a chemical. And
absolutely. And it activates those same patterns that led us to those bigger escape mechanisms, right? So it still activates those same behaviors. And so when I was like, oh, I really want to choose consciousness at this level, I was like, dang, that's a tall bill to order, but I do it totally imperfectly, right? Because trying to do it perfectly is just ridiculous. So it's like, how do you be kind and compassionate and clear with yourself, and then be like, I messed up.
Yeah. And I would assume that somebody who's destroyed their life on heroin, let's say, and it's, powering back 3 to 4 O. Henrys a day, it's never going to be as bad as using heroin. How do we change that mindset that I have stopped this, super unhealthy addiction in my life, and every other way, yeah, you can always do better, but it's always going to be better and not as bad as using heroin. How do you change my mind?
Yeah, awesome question. I love that question because the central nervous system is just designed to keep us alive, right? So I was ingesting so much alcohol and Xanax that I was trying to not be here anymore. So when I got to like the level of like, okay, I'm not going to do that anymore, then how do I tell my nervous system it's okay to go to that next level? So the first thing that we have to do is create safety. Safety is absolutely everything. And there's something about pounding, high energy drinks that feels good and helps the person feel safe. So we have to start working with the system that they have in their life to create more safety. And I always believe in adding things in before we take things away. So as we create that safety and we add things into your life, then you're like, wow, I only had one today. Amazing.
Right.
And then you start to get this idea that like there's a next level. And with every next level that we go to, our patterns come up and our emotional trauma comes up. And it's like, are you sure you want to play that big? I mean, don't you just want to drink these drinks and kind of get by with these relationships that are kind of okay for you? Right. Or do you really want to start to thrive and not just survive? However, the nervous system will not cooperate with you if you don't feel safe. So having that safe container is absolutely everything.
Do you think it's a different experience as far as safety goes for those of us that have been in addiction? Like, you know what I mean? Like you mentioned, energy drinks and I think, but that just causes anxiety. That just, causes a rush, perhaps some adrenaline, sugar rush. Is that a version of safety that's different for addicts?
Well, no, the thing, it's not different for us at all. What is different is that that's safe. Getting my low level needs met was safe. It was comfortable, right? Like kind of just getting by. So the nervous system, when you say like, ooh, I want to do more than getting by, it's going to be like, well, I was keeping you alive like this. You weren't doing heroin. You weren't drinking 5 bottles of wine and a bottle of Xanax a night, right? Like you're doing it different, but you're still not thriving. So we have to get the nervous system basically accustomed to this new level of safety, which means stretching. We have to stretch our nervous systems just like we build muscles. Like, I'm not just going to be like buff overnight. You got to work for it.
Why do I know
So
that?
Darren, how do you do that though?
Yeah.
Like, what are some tips? How do you do that?
Oh yeah, totally. So that's a great question. So first you got to decide what you want, right? Like, do you want to go to this next level? Like, do you want to have a happier relationship? Yes, I want to get my needs met more. I want to be in a relationship where I get my needs met more. Awesome, great. Let's start there. Let's put the goal. How do you want to feel while you're doing it? You ask them this question. How do you want to feel when you're doing it? Well, I guess I'm going to be a little uncomfortable. So will you please keep reminding me of the goal that I'm headed towards? Well, yeah, of course. So then you've got to take aligned, consistent action day after day. You've got to start getting the nervous system used to, I'm going to the gym. I'm going to the gym. I'm going to work out. I'm going to start asking for my needs to get met. And we start small, right? So we get the nervous system ready and more alive. And I take this all into the body, right? So I'm working with people's body. I'm like, ooh, how does that feel right now? Oh, I feel like I'm going to throw up. Awesome. Let's fake throw up together. Blah! Right? Like, let's get that out and let's keep going. No, let's keep going. We got to keep taking that aligned action every day. And I'm right beside you. And I offer so much in between support with a walkie-talkie service and different things so that people know, like, I'm right there with you. I am cheering you on. And as we get the nervous system to feel more safe, we build more courage, we build more confidence. Then, bam, they're like, ooh, they have a win. Then we got to celebrate the shit out of that. Like, oh my God. And it might seem like the smallest thing, but we got to get the dopamine hit in there over and over and over again so that we create a new neural pathway that the nervous system starts to feel safe, to trust that you're going to take care of it no matter what. And if you go and you have half of an energy drink and you're like, oh my God, I feel like shit, and I yelled at my partner, and I didn't work out that day, and I didn't sleep good, and then I ate a whole bag of chips that night, you better believe that that new neural pathway is going to be like, yo, that half an energy drink was not a good idea. So it's aligned, consistent action. It's a lot of support, and it's continuously keeping the nervous system in that safe place.
So, I'm glad that you brought it up in that way, because people in recovery have sponsors, most do anyway. And so there's this conversation out there. So, a recovery coach or life coach, there's a difference, there's a total difference. And so people that are listening that are in recovery, when do you like, when do you know it's like, I need something more than my sponsor? Or like, do you have that ability to know, like, hey, you need to still have a sponsor? Like, does that conversation come up a lot?
Yeah, so if someone likes their sponsor and they're getting along with their sponsor and they want more, I'm like, rock it. Like, we're a team. Like, the more high quality connection that we have, the better, like, that just makes me an more awesome human being when I've got more high quality connection. However, the sponsor's not, informed maybe in all the trauma, and isn't going to be able to take you to those deep places that I can take you, and isn't studied in all of these things, and doesn't, spend all this time there. And what oftentimes people come to me like, I want to do this with my sponsor, but it doesn't feel safe. Awesome. Come to me and keep working with your sponsor. I've got people right now finishing a 4th step and doing some pretty deep relationship trauma work with me. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so juicy. And I've worked the step several times, so I can support in the whole process, which just makes it super integrative. And then we're looking at the whole organism of the person instead of just this one place. And to really thrive, we have to look at our whole organism. Or, if I just focused on my sobriety, I wouldn't be here now, because I wasn't doing that. So I wasn't doing that great when I was just focused on that.
I definitely wish everybody had a life coach, or at least a support group, maybe many life coaches to help guide, because there's always that second guessing, second thoughts, and so forth. And by all means, if you're watching the show right now or listening on the radio, add as many people to your life as possible, like as many. You can never have, because there was a lot of voices in my head, you know what I mean? And when I can actually replace them with real people, that's definitely a benefit. How long have you been doing this for?
I've been doing this for a little over 3 years. I mean, I've been coaching and mentoring people for over 19 years. So I have a lot of experience in coaching and mentoring. Now I just focus on the recovery space because I wanted someone like me when I was doing this thing. And instead, I figured it out. And I really developed a methodology that is proven to work. And it's amazing. And I just last night, someone was like, "Are you going to trademark this?" And I was like, actually, that's where I'm headed. Yes.
Exactly. Yes. You never know where you're going to end up.
Yeah.
What is the ideal time? Like let's say you get a call today from somebody who's, fairly heavy in their addiction. Is there such a thing as like an ability to life coach somebody at that point? Do they need some, at least abstinence from whatever they're using before they're going to benefit from you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, if someone's super active and in their pattern, I call it, then I definitely will start talking to them and understand how complex their trauma is, honestly. Like,
Yeah.
it's all about understanding how complex. So I definitely take calls with people who are still active in their pattern. And then I get a real good understanding. And then I take them down the route that I think will be best. And it's super individualized, right? Like if someone needs a detox, they need a detox.
Yeah.
And that's just where they're at. And then I will recommend, like, let's get into some real recovery based stuff and then go into that next level of coaching and really understanding. But it's all about understanding how complex their trauma is.
Yeah. And it's so nice to know of all of these resources that don't take away from another resource, rather just add to, like you say, that person's journey. How many times, as professional people that are sitting in front of somebody that requires a lot of help, will sort of take on the whole role, from detox, treatment, accountability, medication, and that person sort of gets this idea that, it's getting taken care of. And if the people that are put in positions to help can sort of know their own limitations and where they benefit the best, I mean, the more success to any individual at that point.
Oh yeah. And it's not about me. It's about them, right? Like all day long, like I am here to serve. And then I take really good care of myself on the other end. So, if I'm not a good fit for someone, I will tell people, like, listen, we're not ready for this. And let me lead you and I'll give you the resources that I feel like will help you. And I also participate in the team, right? So I'll talk to people's acupuncturists and chiropractors and doctors, and then we're a collective team that's really supporting the person to go to that next level.
Yeah, amazing.
And taking care of yourself. So you're a person in recovery.
Yes, I
You're
am.
helping people in recovery or whatever phase of recovery they're at. There's always that moment where, I don't like the word balance, because what is balance? But when is it like, how do you how do you still be of service in recovery and be a life coach, and those traditions and the gray areas of going to meetings, and I'm here because I'm at a meeting for me, not, sometimes I go to meetings and it's like everybody sees my work, cloak on, and it's like, don't talk to me about work and all that kind of stuff. How do you get through that? Because so many people in recovery want to be coaches, they get that zest for recovery. How did you get through that? Did you struggle? Do you have any pointers for up and coming life coaches?
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I was a yoga teacher. I'm a yoga teacher as well. So I used everything that I've learned throughout my career to do this. So, my recovery is my recovery, and I get to like do that on my own time. Now, if you don't have healthy, strong boundaries and containers and systems and structure, is gonna get real messy real fast, y'all. So if you are an upcoming coach or something, I definitely recommend reaching out, because I will happily like give you some pointers, because it all takes the same thing that it takes when I'm taking people down that road. It takes first safety in the nervous system, right? And then structure, and then systems, and then the flow of energy to be who you are. So when I taught yoga, I would never go take a class where I taught the students, because that didn't feel safe for me. I couldn't let loose. I couldn't fall over in my postures. I couldn't do those things. And same with, when I participate in anything outside of my group, people know who I am. So I'm like, okay, well, let me go. Oh, it's great with Zoom meetings everywhere, right? So I can just go pick up a meeting in London. And although I serve people in the UK and in Australia. So, it's just really finding that balance, but without healthy, strong limits and boundaries, and honestly doing your emotional trauma work, it's going to get messy real fast, and you'll forget where you start and where you stop, and you'll get enmeshed with your clients. And I've watched that to happen to people.
Yeah. I'm curious, as probably a lot of our viewers are. You hit 10 plus years of abstinence or recovery, a consistent program in your life. Obviously doesn't mean that problems don't come up. Insights aren't lost under denial and busyness and excuses and all of that. What are some very common, and some hard roadblocks that people hit in a recovery program, that may not see it, or may be avoiding it in some way because they should be doing better, or they should have it more conscious?
Yeah, I love that question, because, so much of what we learn in the 12-step programs, and there's so many different 12-step programs, so I support people from all different kinds, but is that like, there's a defect, right, of something, and that people will come to me, and they have 10, 20 years of sobriety, and they're like, oh, and they'll literally tell me I'm still broken. And I'm like, okay, wait, you're not a computer, you're a human being, you're not broken. And what we really find out together is that emotional trauma underneath it, like, so that pain, that hurt, that stuff that happened in those formative years still hasn't really been addressed fully. And something that's so awesome about the support that I provide is just that, like, I've been there. Like, yeah. I choose a conscious sober lifestyle, so it's like easier to tell me these things. But people come in with these ideas that they can never change it. And so what I really teach them is epigenetics, the microbiome, right? What changing neural pathways really looks like and feels like. And then so many people, especially with that much time, have been living up here and have not dropped into their body. So what I do is a bottom-up approach, and I respect the top-down approach. They often had 30 years of therapy or 10 years of therapy. So they know the CBT and the DBT and the EFT and all of the things. And then I'm able to bring them into their body, which is a beautiful experience, because that's when you really see the integration. And like, people come out and like years drop off of them in like 2 weeks. And I'm like, oh, well, that's it. Because you forgot about this thing over here that keeps you alive moment to moment.
Yeah. I mean, I can only imagine if I'm like reeling with a stupid mistake that I made over a 48-hour period, like how I can sort of just distract and go on, and be conscious and suppress it. Like I know how much control I have. So, I mean, it speaks loudly to, deeper traumas or things that may have been sort of touched on in the beginning of somebody's recovery. But how easily and how common it can be that it is suppressed over the whole course of someone's recovery.
Yeah,
and
100%.
it could come out in so many different ways. And I think people talk about, just a sense of a dry drunk, let's say, just a personality of misery and sort of indifference and all of that. Do you see a lot of that?
Yeah. Yeah, where they're like, oh, well, this is just the way I am. This is just the way it's going to be.
Right.
I'm just, I'm never going to lose the weight. Like my sex life sucks, but like whatever. And they're very like snippy and snide and wear this armor of anger of, but like, I work a good program. I'm like, awesome. You're not happy though, man, and that's the difference. It's like, do you want to level up how you feel moment to moment, or do you just want to keep getting by? And like, that's a personal choice, because leveling up means you're gonna be uncomfortable for a little bit to get through it.
Yeah.
Right. And it's so common for people to suppress how they feel. And I have such a heart for that. And I don't like, I'm now so good at telling on myself. I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel really overwhelmed right now. And I need to say this. And like, so that my personal relationships, people are like, dang, Amy, like you just don't let anything slide. Like, I don't.
Well, it's like the pink cloud bashers. It's like, oh, you're just on a pink cloud. And it's one of those things where, I've thought about it a lot, going to meetings for a while, and I go to meetings in different communities and so forth, where I live. There's a lot of youth in the meetings. The meetings are quite loud and quite vibrant. And then sometimes you go to meetings outside of the community, and that might be a little smaller with a candle and, the pain story. And it's like, I'll be like all happy and everything, or just pink clouding it, eh? And it's just like, yeah, like why not, right? Like, yeah. I mean, because you can just focus on all the pain in the world and never even put it, like can't even get through the day, right? So a lot of times it's the process of letting go. Like letting go comes in phases. And when you're brand new in recovery, and you start to have a couple of days back to back, like letting go of certain things that are obvious, like heroin, you start to get healthy and stuff. But it's those little things that, of letting go of, character defects, those opportunities, if they can't get through it through their written assignments and so forth. There's that conversation about, I heard somebody say character defects are like trauma practices where you're just reliving it and so forth. So how, like you say, it's a choice. How do we help somebody choose? Like, is there a way of, coercing them, convincing them? Because there's a lot of people in relationships, there are people that are 3-4 years clean, but there's just that next step that they're not getting through.
Yeah. Oh, and I say often, like, healthy relationships will change, healthy sober relationships will change the world. So how do we cannot coerce someone into this. We cannot force them into this. What we can do is lovingly show them through our actions, and like that there is a next level. Like one of the reasons that I chose to play big, I had a one-on-one practice here in this area, and I was like, no, I want to play big because I want people to see what's possible. But we don't have to stay in these meetings where truly you're like, oh, this is the sad meeting, and this is the happy meeting, and this is the meeting that I go to that I've heard these stories like 100 times, and it's always the same story, and no one wants to dig deeper, right? It's like, but there's there's a whole new level of being a human. And here's the thing, if we've never been there before, because I didn't know that this was possible for me, I had to trust, I had to get that support, I had to go to the mentors, because it was just dark there. And my nervous system was like, oh my God, don't go there. That's just way too scary. So, being willing to walk beside the people that I support, I'm their guide. I'm not trying to like force them, right? We go at the pace that the nervous system wants to go at, and we listen to the body.
This has been a great conversation. Nervous system safety, I'm going to look more into that. Our second guest has now joined us in our chat a couple minutes late, but he's here now, so we're going to be moving on. Amy, thanks for being on the show. Darren?
Yeah, appreciate it. This is Talk Recovery. If you're listening to it on the radio, it's 100.5 FM. If you're watching us, you're on Facebook. Thrive in Recovery. My printer did not print out the colored website name and your social media tags. So check that out on our page.
Yep. Amy, where's your website, Facebook page?
Yeah, at Thrive in Recovery with Amy, Thrive in Recovery with Amy. And then my website's my name, amyguerrero.com.
Guerrero. R-O. Awesome, Amy. Thanks for being on the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks. Be well.
Bye, you too. Nice to see you.
Okay, take care. Thank you. You can also catch Amy on Instagram. Like Darren said, you're listening to Talk Recovery Radio, 100.5 FM, powered by New West Recovery, which is made up of Last Door and Westminster House, Canada's recovery community. You can replay the show on iTunes, SoundCloud, and YouTube. And special shout out to Vancouver Co-op Radio for giving us the space. We've now got Jacob on the air. Hello, Jacob. Your microphone's muted. If you want to unmute yourself.
Hey, how are you?
Okay, there you are. Hello, Jacob. Jacob Evans.
Yeah.
And you're from Hope. What is Hope Guides? And help others prepare for everything. Welcome to the show, Jacob.
Thank you.
So we've been talking to Amy earlier, and the theme of the show is thriving in recovery and recovery coaching and life coaching. So I wanted to thank you for putting yourself out there to help people. Tell us a little bit about Hope Guides.
Yeah, of course. So Hope Guides, helping others prepare for everything, was originally created out of a concept where I knew of a handful of people, I'm in recovery myself, who once they got out of treatment, it was kind of a free-for-all. And it was an experimentation. It was a lot of best practices. And there really wasn't any systematic formula to help people succeed. And I saw that as like a really big problem. So I've always told people that I think the journey from 0 to 5 can happen in less than 30 days. And by 0 to 5, what I mean is that like if 0 is death, so none of us have hit 0 yet. 5 would mean that I can function within a society, meaning like I can hold a job. I'm not physically sick anymore. I'm not craving these things day in and day out. So that's 5. And I believe that can happen in 30 days or less. I believe a lot of people can get from 0 to 5 in 30 days or less. I think that journey is really fast. I think it's really predictable. I think it's really exciting. But that journey from 5 to 10 should take a lifetime.
Right on.
And I think a lot of people get really bogged down in the minutia of like, what does that journey look like? How do I know if I'm progressing along it? Because they want it to be just as fast as that journey from 0 to 5, and it's just simply not. And so we need like,
you're preaching to the converted. I mean, if anybody, like I go to a lot of stakeholder meetings and they say the overdose crisis is because of stigma.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, hold on a second. Like, I work at a treatment center. Our phone rings all day long, 20 times, 30 times a day. Ain't nobody on our phone saying stigma's keeping them from coming to treatment. It's that 5 to 10 you're talking about. Yeah. It's like, no, I can't do rehab. I got to go to work. No, I'm spending $5,000 on dope a month, but I don't have money, all this kind of stuff. And it's that 5 to 10 thing. It's like, how do you get people to realize like the 1 to 5, eat, sleep, shit, do a couple of meetings, do some step work, talk to a counselor, you'll get to 5.
Yeah.
But 5 to 10, how do you help people do that?
Well, so it takes a lifetime, like I said, and if I'm being honest with myself and where I'm at, like if I ever hit 10, hopefully it's on my deathbed when somebody's recounting my life back to me and I realize that I've hit a 10. Right. I think realistically where I'm at right now in my own personal journey is about a 6.5. And that's coming up on, I'm working on year 6 clean. So that should give you an indication as to how long I think that growth process takes. So how you get people there is that they need to start learning how to hit these measurable goals for themselves. And one, like, what does that look like? Congratulations, you're off dope, you're off alcohol, you're not craving it anymore, but what do you need to focus on next? And I believe it's a tiered system of connection. So one, you need to start connecting with yourself. And understanding what it is that you want out of life, because now that you're not drinking, using, drugging, whatever it is, you've gained back considerable amounts of time. And if you're not putting that time to good, effective use of something outside of a job, because you were drinking and using and drugging back whenever you had a job, and then maybe you lost your job because you're doing a little bit too much. Like that's not what people need to be focused on. It's the downtime. And so how are you going to fill that downtime up with things that are helping you grow professionally, personally, interpersonally, that's going to help take you to that next level? Now, somebody who's in treatment would look at my life today and be like, there's no way you're at a 6, but that just goes to show what I grade my 10 at.
Yeah.
Right. And that's just me being responsible, being proactive with my life, really looking at it in a sense of saying like, I'm nowhere near where I want to be, but I'm a hell of a lot closer than where I was. And just being honest with that.
That's, I would call it like a sophisticated level of insight, that there is a 6 to 10, because so many people think 5 is it. 5's the point. 5's going to get me back to work. 5's going to get me back into my relationship. 5 is the whole reason why I decided or was willing to go to treatment in the first place. Mm-hmm. And that mentality will then conclude any more, sort of deeper, more intrinsic work. But it's so commonplace, and it's almost like you can't expect that individual to think beyond that.
Yeah, well, they have to understand it themselves. That's the thing, right? And so, like you asked, like, what's the number one thing that I think that I do? And it's honestly, I think a lot of people don't think beyond, I just want to be healthy, I just want to be sober, and like, but there's so much more beyond that. And so I worked in admissions for a number of years, over 4 years. And so I dealt with those very first phone calls. I dealt with the parents who were like, my kid doesn't want to get healthy. And then I would talk to them, and I could help them see why it was important. And it's very simple. It's what do you want out of life? Go backwards 5 or 6 years. And where did you want to be when you were, let's just say, make up a number and just say 33. Where did you want to be at 33? Was it with a kid? Was it with a partner? Was it with a home? Like, what were those things that you wanted? How far away from those things are you? And then that gives you an indication, and you reverse engineer the goal for where they wanted to be. And then they can see quite clearly, okay, I have a lot of work I need to do. And it's more than just getting sober. Like, that's the first step to be able to get to all these other things.
Sure.
And what they'll realize over time is that once they get sober, like, I'm sure you guys have heard this too, like the griping over 3 months versus 6 months versus year-long programs. It's like, I was at a point, I know that when you're ready, you're ready. And it took me talking to somebody to get me ready. I know that. But once my mind had made that shift, I was like, there's nothing, I don't care how long it is. Like, I'm going to do whatever I got to do in order to never have to go through any of this crap again. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say I love treatment. I don't. I hated it. Like, I hated looking at myself and like having to do that deep exploratory work and having to go through all the pain and trauma that led to me where I was. It's not fun.
Yeah.
But it was necessary. And once I did it right, the one time I did it, I went through treatment twice. And when I did it right the second time, and I was like, I don't care what anybody tells me. If they tell me to hop on one foot for an hour, pat my head with one hand and rub my stomach with another, I'm going to do it for 2, because that's how serious I am about getting this thing right. Like, I don't care if it's AA, counselors, like programs, sober living, whatever it is, I'm going to do it. And I'm going to do it until people tell me that we don't want you here anymore. There's nothing else we can teach you.
And that's generally the argument, or where this idea of, brainwashing or, control comes in with these programs or whatever the treatment center is suggesting, because I would agree that that's an appropriate position for an individual. Like, I'll do whatever you tell me to do, but essentially we're agreeing, to be obedient in whatever you're saying works.
Yeah.
And at some point, the mindset can turn into, okay, well, I'm done with that. I'm not going to do what they told me to do anymore. Mm-hmm. But if you don't do that, are you continuing to be obedient and just follow along? And how can we shift into this appreciation of what was given and what was learned, and then be independent?
That's the constant struggle when you're doing, at least doing what I do. So I'm somebody who takes somebody from the very first phone call, admitting maybe I need this, coming to the determination, yes, I do need this. And then I take them all the way up to a year-long sober. Like, that's my goal, is to get you from the first phone call, using it to the depths of your depths, and then get you to a year clean. And then, statistically speaking, if you get to that year mark and you keep doing the things that you've been doing for that year, you should be okay. Should be, right? Statistics are on your side at that point. But at any rate, I was not a model client. Just because I was willing to do whatever people told me to do doesn't mean I actually did it. It means that it doesn't mean that I did it compliantly. It doesn't mean I did it to the to the nth degree that they wanted me to. Right. It meant that, like, I understood that I needed to. Didn't mean I did it the way that they wanted me to do it every single time. I wasn't model client.
You complied.
Yeah, well, and here's the thing, right? Is like you know, we say brainwashing, and one of the coolest statements I ever heard from somebody is like, you know, maybe my brain needed a good washing. I'd polluted it with
Yeah, we had
yeah. Like I was like, that's brilliant. Like that was me. But what it really comes down to is helping people understand one simple concept. This is how I start the whole thing. It's my whole process is very, very, very simple. Have you guys ever gone bowling with duck pins? You know what I'm talking about? Those little guardrails to like pretty much guarantee
no,
that you
I've never used them, but
it like guarantees you can't bowl. It guarantees you can't throw a gutter ball, right?
Yeah.
Like that's how I like to consider coaching. Is like pretty much like I operate as the guardrail to make sure that you're not going to throw a gutter ball.
Right.
And ultimately, we're trying to get you to knock down some pins. Like that's the ultimate goal, right? So what I do is that I tell people like the pins represent where you want to be. So let's say that it's China, just for lack of a better term, or just like pick your favorite country, whatever it is. The very simple diagram that I can tell you is like if you get up right now and you quarter turn to your left, and then you half turn to your left, and then you do a full turn, 180-degree turn to your left, and you take 10 paces out from each one of those directions, you're going to turn in 3 very different locations. Now imagine if you walk a mile or 6 months or 5 months down the road, you're going to wind up in completely different areas. So you need to figure out exactly where you want to be and then make sure that like you start off with a quarter turn or a half turn or a full turn. And then as you're walking down that path, week in, week out, month in, month out, for months and months and months down the line, you're always course correcting. That way, then you make sure that like if you want to wind up in China, that you wind up there. You don't wind up in Germany, right? And like you wind up in 2 very different locations. And for somebody who's looking for that life after 5, if you get to number 6 and you're like, man, I thought I was going to be in China, and you're in freaking Germany, no wonder people go back out and use, this is nothing like what I wanted. Like, how did I get here? And then you're left in that state of like trying to scramble to figure out things that like you probably should have had figured out long before. And the whole time that you're in treatment, at least in my opinion, when you're in treatment, it's an opportunity to experiment and to figure out what's going to work for you and what is not. So then whenever you're out in the real world, you're not doing those experiments while like real life is on the line, right? Like children are on the line, mortgages are on the line, jobs are on the line. Do that stuff in treatment and course correct while you're in treatment.
If I had this conversation the first time in treatment, like I know it's this sort of, it's that the way my mind works and understands, it could change everything. As someone else who hated treatment 13 times and, you know, doesn't suggest that I'm any way in control of my life.
Yeah.
And it's just getting worse because, you know, listening to you two, the idea of listening, right? And addiction is this medical issue. I just finished a bunch of stakeholder meetings, Jacob, and people with lived experience and people with living experience have a different conversation. People with lived experience are sounding like us, and people with living experience still using. They want to be heard and listened, and they want client-centered approaches, and they want to dictate the treatment process. But you sit there and it's like, you know, if I break my arm and go to the hospital, I'm not going to tell the doctor how to fix my arm. The doctor, if I have diabetes, I'm not going to tell the doctor what my diet needs to be. The doctor is going to tell me what my diet should be. And for addiction, though, it's different. It's like, you know, there's this camp out there that advocates are creating drug policies. So what you are saying and Darren's saying and I'm saying, it's like, no, we need to meet people where they're at, not move them forward to different outcomes. So
I couldn't agree with that statement more. And I think that maybe what I'm saying may be getting lost in the jumble, because ultimately I'm not telling them that they want to be in China. I'm not saying that. They get to define their own China. Right. And then what we're doing is that we're course correcting along the way based on things that work and don't work. And I mean, and anybody who has been in treatment or has gone through year 1 of sobriety knows what I'm talking about. It doesn't work out like a picture book. It just simply doesn't. Like there's going to be days when you come home and you're like, man, my boss was a real a-hole. I acted like this. He acted like that. And I lost the job as a result. right? And like you're constantly going to have to course correct and figure out exactly ways to make it work for you. And the only way that works is if you're invited into the process. I will never tell somebody, I think you need to do this. That's not my role. That's not my position. That's not what I want to do. Ultimately, it's their goals. My job is to have the foresight and the bird's eye view to help say like, well, if you do go left here, just know it's going to take you in this direction. Here's what it looks like 3 steps in front of that left turn. If you go right here, here's what it looks like 3 steps in front of that right turn. And I'm operating as the person who can see it from a bird's eye view. Like if you imagine a guy who's playing, who's calling the plays from the press box of a football game, that's the role that I'm playing. I'm not the guy who's running the options. I'm not the guy who's calling the plays. I'm the guy who's looking at it from the bird's eye view and saying, if you go this direction, statistically speaking, this is what you're looking at. Based on your history, this is what it could look like. So it is very individual based. I understand what both camps would be saying in this trajectory, because like, you know, when I was, let's just put it this way, when I failed treatment the first time, and I say I failed it because the very first day that I was in the treatment center, they told me to look to my left and look to my right. One of you is going to be dead. The other one's going to be in jail. And 2 of you will be lucky to be sober out of this entire group. Hopefully you'll be sitting back in this. Yeah. Hopefully you'll be sitting back inside of this group chair again. My brain did not go, oh, I'm one of those 2. My brain said, geez, I hope I'm alive. I hope I'm not the one who dies. Like, I didn't even go like, hopefully I'm the one who's not in jail. I was just like, you know, hopefully I'm not the one who dies. Yeah. So like, that goes to show like how good my thinking was at that stage, is that like I didn't see a positive outcome for myself.
You know what my thinking was? I'm going to be in your chair, the person telling me that.
Well, it's interesting because eventually that's what got me sober, right? Was that I spoke to this guy, and I had about a month clean at the time, and he started telling me about this program. And my first question was, well, do I get my cell phone back?
Yeah.
And then he was like, no, it's about 30 days. And he goes on for about another 15 minutes, telling me more about the program. And I was like, well, can I at least have my laptop? And he goes, you know what, dude, like, you're not serious. Like, you're not ready for this program. Why don't you call me back whenever you're serious? And he hung up the phone on me. And for me, I was accepted into dental school when I was 18 years old. I was accepted into law school after getting a 4-year degree in 2.5 years. Like, I was not ever told no. I was student body vice president. If I wanted it, I got it. That's how, even while I was in addiction, nobody told me no. And all of a sudden, like, I'm not a good enough addict for a program. So that was exactly the tactic that needed to be said to me. And so like, I thought in my head, like exactly what you said. I was like, not only am I going to be good enough for this program, but I'm going to be the guy who's in your job, and I'm going to do it better than what you've ever done it. And I can say now, looking back on it, you know, coming up on 6 years, like I did take his position. Like, granted, he got promoted to a better one, but I did take his position. I did wind up becoming the best that had ever been in that particular position. So much so that they still keep me employed in that position and have allowed me to build my own business on top of it. So like, I look at the situation, I hear exactly what you're saying. I think you got to have a little bit of fight in you. That's whenever you know that you're ready. Like, otherwise, if you're just laying over, keeling over, and being like, you know, that truly compliant, then like, you know, my hopes are out there for you, because ultimately I think you need to have a little bit of fight. You need to be asking questions. You need to be able to go to your counselors or your therapist and say, well, why are you telling me this? And if they don't have a good enough answer for you to come back with it, then like, you know, that's on them. You should be challenging these things, because it has to be coming from somewhere that says you're going to be successful. And I believe you're going to be successful based on this, if you choose this path. If I can't get behind it as the client, and I can't understand your rationale in telling me just the way that I think, then how can I ever be expected to adopt that thinking for myself? Like, I have to understand why you're telling me these things. If I don't understand, go ahead.
That's always difficult, because, you know, you can be perceived as the guy that's not willing, that's argumentative. But I agree. I've worked in the industry in that same position, and I believe a little back and forth is required to keep that individual appreciative of where he's at.
And to show that we understand them, right? And I think that's like back to what we were just talking about. Like, they want to feel heard, and they want to know that their opinion matters and their opinion counts. So like, if I can't tell you why, based on your history, based on your goals, why I'm suggesting this particular suggestion, then it just goes to show that I haven't really been listening to you for the last month, 2 months, 3 months. It's just, it's important that they understand that we understand them. It's important that they feel understood, that they feel heard.
Yeah.
And so I agree at the same rate, like there has to be a back and forth, but at some degree, at some point in time, there is the professional, right? And there's the person who's walked the person through a desert 1.5 million times. This is my favorite analogy. And it's, you know, if you've never walked through the desert yourself, what do you think the likelihood of you crossing that desert by yourself would be?
Well, yeah, as a newcomer, 100%. As a person in recovery, I wouldn't make it.
Well, here's the thing, right? Here's the real heart of the matter. And you know, not to get biblical or anything like that, but just to say, like, Moses, it took Moses and his tribe 40 years. They were just wandering around. They didn't have GPS. They had no clue what they were doing. They were in uncharted territories, right? Did they survive it? Yeah, they did, but it took them 40 years to get there. So I liken that to the person who's been in and out of treatment centers for the last 10 years, right? Is it likely that you can probably get through it? You know, hopefully, I hope that you can, right? But what if I could shorten that time frame? Do you know how long it says to take the same path Moses and his tribe took? Do you know how long that MapQuest or Google Maps says it'll take now?
How long?
Less than 7 days on foot.
Jesus.
Do you know why? Because somebody has gone through, mapped out the exact best course that you could take, and you can literally follow it via GPS. Like, so we turned 40 years into 7 days. That's a lot less of a journey, a lot less strenuous of a journey, but you're still taking the same journey. So if I can get you from 0 days clean to 1 year clean with a lot less frustration, bumps, you know, hunger, thirst, people dying along the way, if I can get you from there to there in a hell of a lot less time than what it took me, well, then I'd be doing you a disservice, right? And not only that, but like, as people who are in these positions, we've helped thousands of people cross those deserts. I did the math the other day. I've had over 5,000 conversations with people in early recovery.
Wow.
Now, not every single one of them found recovery based on a conversation with, but I did play a role in their recovery.
And that's what recovery is all about. It's helping people get from point A to point B.
Exactly.
And trying to live the best life that they could. You're listening to Talk Recovery Radio, coming to you live on 100.5 FM. And we've got Jacob Evans from Hope. And you can go to his website at hopeguides.com. And thank you so much for being on our show. Help others prepare for everything. I love the 1 to 5 and the 5 and the 6 to 10. That 6 to 10 is just so important, and I'm probably going to use that as well in some conversations that I do. Darren,
Don't forget China. Don't forget about the China analogy. It works for
okay,
people.
I won't forget about the China analogy either. You know, love your energy. Thanks for being on the show. What city are you in anyway?
So I live in Southern California currently. I'm from the Eastern Panhandle of West Virginia, just outside of Baltimore and DC. That's where I grew up. So I'm kind of all over the place. But you know, as of right now, I'm calling Southern California home.
Okay, well, if you're in that area, because our show gets online heard everywhere, you know, check them out. And I really appreciate you being on the show. Thanks for joining us today.
Of course.
Shout out to Kimmett, who's going to replay our show live on the radio. Thanks, Kimmett, over at Co-op Radio. Darren, we got 30 seconds left.
Yeah, just in close, super pumped about today's show. I don't know, probably makes sense that we're talking to coaches and you know, sort of that idea that there's more. And I've always wondered myself that if I'm looking for help, if I'm looking for any type of lifestyle coaching, is that because I'm an addict in my past, like I came from that, or am I just sort of a fallible human being and you know, needs a little pumping up and a little motivation? And just through these conversations today, it's like, yeah, man, like I know where I'm stuck, and I know that I am stuck, and I can admit it. I would never admit that I'm living in a 10 right now, you know, or else what else am I going to shoot for?
Exactly.
So I just appreciate the conversations today, and thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Okay, see you next Thursday, everyone.
Hi.